Welcome to Mitten Music, where we discover and explore all things that make the local Michigan music scene happen. All right, today we're in the WYCE radio station, Ryan.
We are not at home, my friend.
We are not, again. Pretty exciting. It's awesome to be in an actual recording studio. We have today, from WYCE, we have the station manager, Phil Tower, and our music and program director, Chris Cranick. Welcome, guys.
Hey, thanks for stopping by, guys.
Hello, welcome.
One of those names sounds really familiar, Jeff. I feel like we've maybe talked to Chris before.
Yeah, it's been about a year, I think.
Yeah, a couple moons ago.
Has it been a freaking year?
Give or take.
Was it 2022 that we talked to you last? Yeah, it must have been, right?
Yeah, it was either November or December because it was very snowy.
That's right. Chris Cranick from Overdrive Orchestra, one of our favorite, me and Jeff's favorite bands that we've seen a few times now.
Definitely.
Thank you, Chris, for hooking us up. And you got a job here earlier this year, right?
That's correct.
WYCE in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Yep, thanks to Phil Tower.
Ooh. Chris, before we start peppering Phil with questions, how did it come about that everybody's looking for a job. I mean, not everybody always, but someone's always looking for a job, right?
Yeah.
We got to know you last year. You're a musician. You're cool. You're in that realm of the type of people we like talking to. How did you wind up connecting with Phil and getting a job at one of the local radio stations here in West Michigan?
Well, I was, like you said, looking for work. Last year was like the most contract gig work that I've done ever. It was the first year that I had a profit and not a loss. And taxes were not very kind to me. So
fair.
I figured it was time to have a nice, proper day job. You know, I've been working at like bars and stuff for little odds and ends just to have that like quote unquote normal job, which I think I told you guys last year it saved me when COVID hit and everything came to a halt. But yeah, I was just like looking online. I think I found the listing on Indeed actually, and
cool.
I applied. Phil and my wife go back quite a few years in radio, and so she put in a good word for me as well. I gotta think that helped a little bit.
Until Phil met you, and then he's like,
he's like, what have I done?
This guy, this freaking guy.
But yeah, he took a chance on me, which I really appreciated. I have a different set of skills that I have brought to the table as opposed to former music and program directors, and in the meantime have been learning those skills that I didn't already have. And it's just been a really, really fun year, and we're really excited for 2024.
Sweet.
Awesome. So, yeah, I mean, if nobody knows, and I'm sure there's some listeners here that are like, what's WYCE? I mean, it's a radio station, but it's more than a radio station. It's a community radio station. So give us a little background on what that means and what makes that up and how some of the history on the station.
So this is Phil Tower, and yes, I did hire Chris, and I will take credit for that in the good days and the bad days.
That's a good sign.
Chris really stood out. We had national candidates from all over the country. As you can imagine, YCE's been on the air, and for those who don't know, we've been on the air for nearly 40 years. We have a good reputation nationally because of what we've done. We've been in this format, which I'll talk about in a minute, for the majority of the time we've been on the air. And what I really liked about Chris was new perspective. He has education in the music business, is a musician, knows the music business, but wasn't jaded by the radio business and didn't come in with a bunch of preconceived notions like a lot of program directors do. Program directors are like architects or contractors who will come into your house and tell you everything that's wrong with your house, even after you just build it. And so it's great to have him with a fresh perspective, understanding that we can always improve the sound of the station, but not coming in here, with a wrecking crew trying to really upset what has been very successful for us for many years. So we have been programming a really crazy format for 36 years. It's on paper, you could call it AAA, Adult Album Alternative or Americana, but with a strong dose of world music and jazz thrown in. In fact, I love telling this story, and I've told Chris this. One of the candidates who applied for his job said during his interview, "Jazz, I have no idea why you're playing jazz. That has no business on your radio station. That's the first thing I do is get rid of it. You can't even seg records into a jazz record." So I always thought that was really interesting. I like people with strong opinions. I was like, wow, okay. And it's a mix of folk, blues, jazz, rock, and world music. Now, rock can be a lot of things. We all know that. Under folk, you can have bluegrass. You can have singer-songwriter. You can have several subgenres under each genre. And over the last 15 years or so, we've added in, I like to say, a lot more accessible hip-hop. It is something that we were woefully short in. We sounded very white and in a much more diverse city and region. And so we've added a good number of hip-hop artists and R&B artists, and really trying to diversify the sound of the radio station. As crazy as it sounds, we're incredibly diverse, but we needed to sound more like the world we are living in, the community we're operating in and licensed to operate in. So we are a public radio station. The big difference is most people think public radio, okay, you're affiliated with a college or a university, NPR. We are not an NPR station. We have no news. We have no government funding that we receive. We're all grassroots radio and have been since the beginning. We were actually put on the air by the Wyoming Public School District here in Grand Rapids. Wyoming is a suburb of Grand Rapids, and that's where the radio station was born. It was a student-run radio station. The students ran amok, and the administration of the school said, okay, I think we maybe need to put some structure in. So the first station manager, Tracy Taylor, was hired, and the first format was born, and there were a group of volunteer programmers who stuck around and said, we're going to keep this thing on the air. And that format was, let's play a mix of folk, blues, jazz, rock, and world music, and it's really stuck. And it's interesting, as the music revolution happened because of the digitization of everything and the MP3 revolution, and first Napster, and then, of course, the iPod, and then streaming with Pandora, and then Spotify and Apple Music. The radio station kind of came into vogue. As much as I told some people here a long time ago, we have to be careful because we are not the hippest thing in the room anymore. Now anybody can put together a pretty kick-ass playlist on their phone, and they don't really need to listen to us. So one of the special ingredients in this radio station is we have live people in the studio hand-picking all of their music for every single show that you hear on the station. That is unheard of in the radio industry. It's unheard of in the public radio industry. We are an outlier, and we're pretty damn proud to be an outlier.
You should be, definitely. Hey, how many programmers does it take? I mean, how many do you have involved?
To change the light bulb?
Yeah, exactly. To turn the record, to spin the record?
Yeah.
We've got upwards of 60 volunteer programmers who,
Whoa.
like I said, volunteer. They come in every week. They put together a 3-hour show. Some of them spend twice that amount of time putting together the show ahead of doing it live. And they really are like the lifeblood of the station. I mean, we can't do not even over half the things that we do without them. So
I thought you were going to say maybe 15 or 20. You said 60. 60 people.
Yeah. It takes a village to run a radio
Holy
station.
smokes. Yeah, a legit village for sure.
yeah,
That's awesome.
Well, and what I think is cool is that, like you talked about, Phil, that's the diversity, right? Too, the curation is different because there's different people involved, and they have different likes, and that's what I love about music is you can find so many different things, and everybody has that at least common theme that they love music, but it's different. Everybody has their...
And not only do they discover artists in our library, which is nearly 500,000 cuts, digital cuts,
Wow.
they discover artists on their own, but they discover artists from looking at other programmers' playlists. So it's this mutually beneficial music discovery system internally and externally for the listeners. And we run into listeners all the time who say my Shazam is blown up because of you guys. And I really think that the secret sauce in a radio station is the volunteer programmers. It is really special to have live radio. And if you guys know anything about the radio business, sadly, it has really just kind of constricted down to just a few people left, most of it corporately controlled. And there are a lot of great people who still work in corporately owned radio stations. It's just there's very little local control anymore. And it's just the way the business has become. And, you know, for a lot of people, it's just like McDonald's and Taco Bell are okay. That's their thing. It's their groove. And we are definitely for the person who has a more discerning taste for music and variety. And people are just more open-minded musically. It's crazy. As much as I think we all want to think WYCE is the greatest thing ever, there are a lot of people who just really don't care about music. And I sometimes wonder, do you have any actual human DNA in your body? When
Agreed.
You know, somebody's like, I don't like music is music.
Totally
Just
agree.
give me my Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin in Boston and I'm fine. And, you know, what are you laughing for? You know these people, right?
Oh, I know them. Yes.
Yeah. So I've always wondered that. And, you know, I grew up in a musical family, and I remember the first time I have the unique distinction of being the only two-time station manager for the radio station. I was really fortunate to run the station in the late 90s when we were really, I think, coming of age and really growing our audience. We moved into this beautiful new facility, which we're talking in right now. We've been here 27 years, downtown Grand Rapids. But, you know, my eyes and ears were open then because I had been in commercial radio at that point for a long time. I had no idea the breadth and the depth of our library. And I was blown away. And so it was an awakening for me. And the reason I don't do a show today, unless I'm really seriously pressed and forced to do it, is because the music library is so amazing. It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to look bad in front of my fellow programmers. That's what it comes down to.
That's a good I like that. That's legit.
So before we jumped on air, Chris was showing us the library, which is pretty sweet, and mentioned that there's some rules and of how something gets in the library. Can you guys elaborate a little more? How does something become part of the library?
Well, I'll let the program director talk about that. And program and music director, notice he wears two hats.
Oh, I did notice that, but I didn't know if everybody wore two hats or if Chris is just special.
We all wear a lot of hats.
Yeah, lots of hats. And I have more hats at home, but I wear two here.
Fair enough. I like that. Thank you.
But yeah, so I think first and foremost, like it's got to fit within the format, which thankfully it is so eclectic and not necessarily all-encompassing, but it really stretches far across all those different subgenres that we were talking about. I mean, you can have within one of those five main genres a myriad of subgenres. And if the music is good, like good production quality, good recording, if I can make it work within what we've already got going on here, then it absolutely fits the criteria to be added into the library. As far as like the format goes, there are like some I call them like local loopholes. Like the biggest thing I think for all of us, but me especially, is we want to shine a light on those local artists and regional artists here in Michigan, just like y'all do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so like if we've got a band that comes in and maybe they're playing like metal music, but they're local, I'd be like, all right, I mean, yeah, like if it's produced well, all this stuff, I'll put it in. It's probably going to be day parted. We're not going to play it before 10 p.m. because it's very aggressive. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to be like, oh, well, no, you can't.
We're not going to entertain.
Yeah, you can't be part of this
listening
club.
to you on our station.
Yeah, you check all these other boxes that we like, but just because you're
This
a little
one,
bit,
yeah,
just because you're a little bit
too
more
edgy.
of an outlier.
Yeah.
Us,
Fair.
the outlier, is going to say no.
That's cool.
But yeah, you're not going to hear like Metallica on the station by any means. But yeah, it's got to be good quality wise. The older I get, the more of an audiophile I become, and I'm sure you're even more so than I am, Phil. I wish sometimes I didn't hear some of the things that I hear, but
Yep.
it's a blessing and a curse. But yeah, as long as it fits within those categories, and obviously there's like legacy artists too that are almost kind of grandfathered in unless they really drop the ball on a new record. I think there's only been maybe one artist since I've come on who we have like every one of their other records, and the one they dropped this year was just like, really?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I'm not going to
Yeah,
drop any names.
No, that's
Right.
fine. That's
Yeah.
not a big deal.
But yeah, I mean, like Willie Nelson has dropped so many records in the last couple months alone. Probably just trying to bankroll everything while he still can.
Sure.
The new Dolly Parton record is fantastic. So yeah, like there's definitely those artists that are just, they have been a part of the YCE sound for so long. They're just legacy artists.
Yeah, that makes sense. Going back to the quality of the actual recording to get it in here, what are you making sure it just doesn't sound like it was recorded with one microphone in a garage, or are you looking for more than like, oh wow, there's 18 layers, 18 different tracks, I can hear every one, and like how deep do you get on the quality of recording? Just curious.
Yeah, I would say, like if I can tell that it was recorded in somebody's basement, into GarageBand, that it's really going to come down, I think, to the drums are really what either shine or suffer in a production standpoint.
Interesting. Okay.
But again, talking about loopholes, there's a lot of artists that intentionally record lo-fi.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like Unknown Mortal Orchestra, like all of their stuff sounds like it's coming through a transistor radio, and I love that sound so much.
Specifically for that album, the reason they did it, it was purposeful. It wasn't because they were lazy or cheap or whatever.
Exactly. And in a lot of those cases, though, maybe it was recorded very hi-fi and they filtered it down to sound like that, or they intentionally used older equipment. My big thing is just like make it make sense. If it works and it makes sense,
the effort put into it. Like, I can tell you put effort into this. It sounds like you put effort into us, as opposed to this was the first time you ever tried recording. Come back in a couple after you have some more, effort into it and make it sound good, and push out your sound and figure it out.
Absolutely.
Then come back for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Gotcha. Oh, awesome. It makes perfect sense.
So you were talking to Chris a little bit about local music, which we focus on a lot, about Michigan music. Can you explain some of the ways that you guys highlight? I mean, I get one of your programmers could highlight a local band in their 3-hour set, right? Or a couple of them.
Yeah.
But I think you guys do a good job of some of the other things that the station either promotes, or just the shows that are on during the week that promote Michigan music. You want to hit on any of those?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've got almost, not quite every day of the week, but I would say the majority of the week we have at least one show that kind of highlights local music. Every Friday we've got Local Spins, hosted by John Sinkovics. And that is going to be kind of the realm where if, you have a record that maybe isn't part of our sound,
Right.
like you can almost guarantee if you reach out to John, he's gonna play it. We also have GR Live every Thursday that is broadcasted from the Midtown, and that's hosted by Quinn Matthews, and that'll be 2 acts live at noon every Thursday. We just had it a couple hours ago.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's a really fun one. You get so many different types of artists there. You'll have the singer-songwriters, you have people bringing in their full band, maybe they're acoustic, maybe they chose to bring all their equipment for 20 minutes, but that's a really cool thing. We've had like theater performers in there talking about stuff going on at like the Civic Theater. It's a really cool kind of live highlight of music. And then we also have a bunch of in-studios that we'll do here on the premises. And that's one of the things that, again, I really enjoy about the job is reaching out. Obviously we're going to be reaching out to touring regional and national artists to get them in when they're coming through town. But if we have, a local sweetheart that has a show, like, please come in and give us a little sneak peek before the show. And so we'll do that in our on-air studio, and we also have a performance studio that has been being renovated over the past couple months, and we actually had our first proper performance back in there yesterday. So it's a really, really exciting time
Ooh, that's
for
cool.
the station. And then on top of that, every day, multiple times a day, we air our concert calendar, which is going to shine a light on basically all of the shows of the week within a reasonable amount of time. You know, if you hear it on Monday, it's probably only going to get through like Wednesday, but as you get through the week, you're going to get a couple days spread of what's going on this week.
Because there's a lot. There always is.
There always is.
I mean, Jeff and I, we just, hop online, and every other day we can find 8 new shows that we didn't see last night when we did the exact same thing.
Right.
It's bonkers.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's great. It's awesome for Grand Rapids.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's a huge reason why this station's so important. You guys are supporting the community, musicians, the venues. I mean, ultimately that brings people into their venues, all that stuff. So that's really, really unique too. Because I don't know, and Phil, you might be able to talk to us more about commercial radio. I think there's some of that, but typically I feel like when I've listened to commercial radio for years, it's mostly the national acts coming through that come to the bigger venues, or maybe in a little bit smaller venues, but not so much highlight on the local. Is that?
Yeah, it's, again, because of the reduction of staffs, because of corporate control, and really because of the resources you have for national radio companies like Odyssey and iHeartMedia and so on and so forth, Cumulus, Town Square. They can pay for research on, national playlists, test the records over and over again, and they really don't have the time nor the resources to even review music at the local level. Again, it's just a change in the system. It's unfortunate because you could make the argument, just like art, that not every artist deserves airplay, and that's not a cruel thing to say. It's just I have great respect for musicians and artists. I think they basically are creating art in 2 different platforms. That being said, I think what we do has more importance than ever because we want to be, as a community-based radio station, we want to be open and inclusive. As Chris said, as much of that music as possible, even if it was a local metal band that had a tightly produced new album and it sounded pretty good and unique, yeah, we would try to find a way to play it. It's not going to get played, during the daytime hours, but we'd play it at night, just like we have a lot of louder rock in our library. We can sound like a rock and roll station, and sometimes have, based on the mood that the programmers are in. But the ability to, and this is a real important fact about WYCE and a lot of community radio stations in the communities that they're licensed to, the ability to help seek out, lift up, promote, provide airplay, promote their concerts for local and regional musicians is huge. Without that support, a lot of these bands would not be able to get enough oxygen to survive.
Yeah.
And I don't say that lightly because it is a rare thing in radio today. Thankfully, as radio has diminished in that capacity, social media has just, exploded. And I don't think bands today have any idea how important it is that they exist in a time where you have your own global marketing system that's free, which is in almost any social media platform. You could talk about that for a long time, about how important TikTok and Instagram, Facebook, and any number of places have been for helping bands get noticed, get attention. And it is something that's really important. And I think the local music community has reflected back to us that they really appreciate it. Of course, our signature event, which was started 22 years ago, we think, 22, 21 years ago, the Jammies Awards were all about to celebrate and recognize the best of local music. And it's one of the things that's really put us on the map, and something we're very proud of, that we do that.
Yeah, so explain that a little more for people who don't know what the Jammies are.
The Jammies.
So let me ask you a question. Are you familiar with the Grammys?
Yes.
It is like a localized version of that. But even more so, I think it's more of a, we do have the award ceremonies and all that, but I think it is much more of a celebration of the community. We have musicians come for the event, even if they're not playing. I think we had like the record attendance this past February. which is awesome after the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And yeah, essentially we have a really great working relationship with the Intersection, and they essentially give us one of their open dates, usually in February, and we have kind of free reign of the whole venue. So we use the Intersection stage, the Elevation stage, the Stash, and we have bands rotating throughout the night from 5 to 11, 6 to 11. It's quite a long night,
Cool.
but very, very rewarding for everybody. It's rewarding for the staff and the volunteers. It's definitely rewarding for the musicians. And I think by the time this episode airs, it will be common knowledge. This upcoming Jammies will be February 23rd. So save the date, mark your calendars.
Perfect. Thank you for adding that in.
Absolutely.
The fact that you know that already is brilliant.
Yeah, we've been
Good job.
really ahead of the curve planning this one.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, a lot of sometimes you can't avoid it. Stuff comes right down to the wire, but we're doing our darndest to have all our ducks in a row for this coming up.
And all the pressure is on Chris to come up with 18 or 20 bands.
Oh, nice.
3 stages and 1 venue. And the amazing about it is there's no ticket. It's show up at the door, $5 minimum donation. We are going to offer a VIP level ticket this year, which will get you a reserved seating area and a table and access to a VIP room where you will be able to, kind of chill. We're going to have a big video monitor in there so you can see what's going on the stages, private bar, and just kind of a place to hang. So that's something new we're doing this year as well. But it's, as Chris said, it's like the Grammys, but it's one night, and it's like a giant inside music festival with a few awards scattered in between, and 3 stages, and very diverse, all kinds of types of music and everything else. Your mic's out.
I'll just steal yours like this. It's all good.
All right. So one thing I want to go back to, Phil. So that's awesome. I do think that Jammies is amazing venue, and I'm excited to see what comes of this year and who's invited. Going back to supporting the artists, though. So radio stations, I never really fully understood this, and so maybe you can hit on this a little bit around what you are required to do or not do, like paying the artist, any of that stuff. How does that play out when you play a track? What are the requirements around that? Do you have to play certain tracks? I feel like here you can you have a lot more freedom than anywhere else. So I feel like I've heard mixed things before. You have to play so many. If you play this song, you have to play it so many times if it's new or something like that. So kind of clear the record, or set the record straight, I guess.
Well, I could have Chris add to this. Really, most formats, and we'll just talk about country for a moment. Most formats are going to play the top hits that are charting based on spins, and that's going to be an aggregate of spins on radio stations, plays or spins, and also on streaming services as well too. And that's going to be measured by a number of services that will measure that, and then they'll put out a chart. A lot of people do charts. We report to some of the national services. I'm trying to think of what's the big one.
Jack Barton Entertainment, Media Base.
Yeah, Media Base is probably the biggest one. Billboard still does a chart, but generally speaking, they're going to play, the top 40 or 50 songs, and then those would be, the current hits, and then there's another category stations have had for decades called recurrent, songs that may have come out 6 months to a year ago, and then everything else in another category would be a gold category, which would be, something that came out anywhere in the last 2 years to 20 years. Really depends on how deep your library goes. And if you're a classic rock station, you're not going to play anything new, which is kind of interesting. It to me doesn't make sense, but then again, if you like the same kind of music and you like to hear it over and over again, that's what a classic rock or a classic hit station is from. And again, nothing against them. There are a lot of people who love those radio stations, want to hear the same 250 songs over and over and over again. But as I said around the office yesterday, if I hear Jingle Bell Rock one more time, I'm going to put my head through a window. I want to hear variety. But there are no mandates in terms of what you play or have to play so many times. There are, because of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, there are restrictions in terms of how many times you can play an album, how many within a period of time. I think it's 3 hours. You can't play X amount of cuts off of one album or from one specific artist. The concern there being, somebody could record this if somebody just played the whole album. So there were safeguards built in to keep people from just essentially playing a full album and people digitally stealing it on their PC or their phone or whatever.
Okay.
So most of what you hear on commercial radio stations is from a corporately derived or regionally derived playlist.
Okay. So I always thought, and this is obviously a misconception, but like when a radio station like a classic rock station, we're going to do the deep cuts today. Like it's like this special thing, and we're somehow able to play these, but it really is their choice because of the format that they want to do, and because they're not as popular or are going to hit as much. That's why they only do that on certain days or hours to kind of hit that. Okay. So then as far as kickback to the artists, I don't know if you guys play into that, or you just have to say how many plays you had so that they get paid, or...
Every radio station has to pay, stations that play music, and even spoken word or talk stations that, use little clips of music for bumpers going back from and out of shows, talk shows or sports talk shows. They have to pay music licensing fees. So we pay on an annual basis through our National Federation of Community Broadcasters. We pay an annual music licensing fee.
Okay.
To the major music publishing house, BMI, ASCAP. Another one is CSAC. I don't think those are the three big, worldwide music publishers. And they require that every radio station that plays music pays those fees. And they, in turn, of course, turn around and pay the music, the songwriters, composers, et cetera. It's how musicians make money. I think everybody's heard that in Spotify and Apple in the streaming world, the amount of money made per stream of one song, if Chris is, his band Overdrive Orchestra is getting airplay, a couple of spins on Spotify, it's like 0.00013 cents out of every spin.
Yeah.
So nobody's getting rich on a streaming service unless it's Taylor Swift and maybe a handful of other artists. In radio, that's not a lot different, but it's not nearly that low. But yeah, they're obviously the songwriters, the composers, the label, everybody's getting a cut with the music licensing fees.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, more so than even, having all these people involved get paid. The big thing that we do by reporting all of the spins is just that. It's the spin counts. That's really kind of how the business works. So, if we have a local artist who maybe they just moved down to Nashville and they're trying to, cut their teeth down there, if they release a record and we're spinning it because they used to be here, and again, like local sweethearts, those make it to the trades, I've had, I think it was Patty Pershela moved down south and linked up with a music promoter, and I spoke with him every week. I have a call day. It's kind of like an old radio tradition. So I spent a couple hours each week just talking to reps, and when the record came out every week, he'd follow up and he's like, really appreciate, the spins. We had a record charting this week, and that's because of the programmers. I say what can get added to the library, but outside of that, like, it really is the programmers that choose what it is that they want to play. And like we said, we have these restrictions so we don't get artists being played too much, but without a doubt, the best stuff kind of does rise to the top, which is awesome to see. And it's because, again, those volunteer programmers, like, we're not, looking over their shoulder, breathing heavy or anything. Like, they make their show. We have our format clocks, and they kind of, that's their playground.
So it makes sense if you hire a programmer, you have a programmer on staff doing their job, they can pick from the bucket of songs that you have here in your library. They I'm guessing cannot go outside of that library to play songs live on your station. That's the rule, right?
Correct.
They can pull from your library, and you are the one that's helping getting songs added to the library, whether it's from programmer suggestions or Phil's or anybody else, you know. It all kind of comes, and it's probably an ongoing thing.
It is, yeah.
Interesting.
And I welcome all the suggestions. I mean, I have been introduced to so much music this year that I would not have been, you know, serviced through Spotify or any other algorithm. Amazing music that, again, I wouldn't have found on my own, that I'm now like a super fan of some of these artists and albums. And yeah, there's still stuff that goes over my head or under my nose, and that's where the rest of the programmers and the staff come in and like, hey, did you hear this? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I've been bumping this other record. It's really cool, and it again just feeds into the whole community vibe. Like, it really does take a village.
Yeah.
And there's a trust that they really abide by, which is they understand it's important to play new music. It's important to play local music. They understand that we are an important conduit for those bands getting airplay. So those programmers on the air here, again, which are all volunteer programmers, none of them are paid, they understand that it's important to highlight new music. And Chris really described it very well. And it's the best stuff does rise to the top. It gets the most spins inevitably because it's a really good sounding record, or it's an artist that a lot of people really enjoy. And, you know, Dolly Parton is the carrot right now that everybody's talking about around the station because, in fact, we called her the Taylor Swift of the old people generation. And really what it is that it's just really an eye-opening record. There's no internal infatuation with Dolly Parton. It's something that really seems to have hit a nerve with a lot of programmers, and it's an album that has 35 cuts.
Yeah, 35.
And which is crazy. It would be considered a double LP, but it really has resonated around here, and that's the magic of WYCE and community radio. You never know when an album like that's going to catch fire. Again, is there any secret rule that we must play Dolly Parton records once a day? No, it's kind of happened organically, and that could happen with a Dave Matthews or a Bruce Springsteen or really any record. I think about American Hotel System and Jack Droppers, some of these great bands we have here locally. It happened with Warren Treaty and Billy Strings, and it's really a wonderful thing to see this happen organically. And then, of course, you know, Billy Strings reach a level where he's up in the stratosphere.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
And, you know, hey, Billy, remember us over here on the west side of Grand Rapids. And, you know, in the end, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we get to be a part of that as a community radio station that celebrates local and regional music. It still matters.
Yeah. And so that you talk about the community, one thing I want to rein in is, you talk kind of the beginning. It's a public radio station. It's not getting government funding or any of those things, or university funding, any of that. So how is it funded, and how can people help keep this radio station strong and move forward?
Two main funding sources. It's very simple. It's listener donations. I say unfortunately, but fortunately, we do have to go on the air, you know, a handful of times a year, 2 or 3 times a year, and ask people to support us with a financial donation. We've got a very, very loyal base that writes checks to us, or, you know, has an automatic payment coming out of their credit card once a month. And then the other main source of funding is small business underwriting. Chris has been hitting a special bottle of bourbon in the studio here or something. I don't know. Are you going to be all right? He's going to be okay.
I get so emotional thinking about the kindness and generosity of our listeners.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying, I think, you know, when you look at the fact that it's grassroots radio, truly grassroots, it's a very frightening proposition, but the listeners and the small business underwriters do keep us going. And we make money on events in the community. We make a little bit of money. We don't make a lot of money. The Bubble Bash that we do, which is an annual fundraiser we do with the Gilmore restaurants at the Bob, we make a little money of that. We make a little bit of money on our Graham on the Green concert series, but it's very little. It's more for community exposure. And, we make a little money helping to pay for our behind-the-scenes costs on the Jammies. But 95% of our budget comes from small business underwriting and from private listener donations. People will say, hey, I really love you guys. If I can pay Spotify $10 a month, I'm going to give you, $10 or $15 a month. And are we swimming in cash? No. Every day is a struggle. As I told a really generous donor to us the other day, somebody who gave us, $500 as a matching donation. I said, $500 to us is like $5,000. It's a really big deal. And every little bit matters. And I think there are a lot of people who think we're just another NPR station. We really don't, we've got a big college or university backing us. It's truly grassroots. What is the exact same when I ran the station in the 90s as today is we struggle for every dollar we raise. Every dollar we raise, we struggle. And that's okay, because in the end, it's worth it. We've got a really cool thing here. And if somebody gave us $1 million and said, here's $1 million, but you have to play only the music I like, I think we'd walk away from it.
Yeah. Well, it's good to stay true to yourself. So done it for almost 40 years, so it seems to be working. One other thing that people might not realize is this station is part of the Grand Rapids Community Media Center, which does a lot of other things in that. So I don't know if it's kind of a collaborative thing. I mean, obviously you guys do your direct fundraising, but I assume that kind of helps support you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. And, I think one thing we have really torn down to use the corporate term, silos. We do a lot of collaboration. Chris will work with the Wealthy Theater if they have a client that wants to book a band in there, or, GRTV may be working with us on a music issue that they need help on. I mentioned the Wealthy Theater. We own and operate the historic Wealthy Theater in Grand Rapids, which is an amazing venue. We also have GRTV, which is the public access TV station. It's been on the air 41 years in Grand Rapids. It's funded by the cable franchise fees, and that little part for those who still do pay the cable company for broadband or cable TV, there is a local franchise fee that everybody's bill has a little line item, and that's what supports public access TV. And we also have the Rapidian, a hyper local newspaper here, web services. Did I forget anybody? I think that's everybody, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the admin team, but that's the CMC.
And we've been in this building for, as I said, about 27 years. First community media center in the United States here in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And that's on Bridge Street, if anybody doesn't know. Which there has been some revitalization on a little bit east of here, too. And there's a lot of things
Quite
going
a bit.
on. Yeah. It's changed, I'm sure.
It has changed quite a bit. Yeah, and you can join the Community Media Center. I think the station manager would know. I think it's $40 a year.
It is.
For an annual membership. Thank you, Chris. And what I think is really important is we all know you guys. Everybody can learn anything on YouTube. Just go to YouTube, look, how to cook pancakes, or, how to shoot good video for a podcast. But here we actually have professionals who teach media production skills. And you can check out, once you're a member, you can take free classes. We have a podcasting class. We have video production classes. You can host your own TV show. You can even check out equipment for free, world-class audio and video equipment. And that comes with a membership. And if you are a member, then, of course, you can sign up to take our programmer class once a year as well, too.
Okay. Awesome. Lots of resources, it sounds like.
I think we need to take that podcast class, man.
We need to up our game.
I think so. We might be able to learn something.
Yeah,
you never know.
Definitely. Yeah.
You guys, this was awesome. I just love being here in a real studio building. It's different than, hey, come on over to my serial killer basement. Yeah, come on in. I swear we're nice over here. Just anybody coming over to some suburbs house, okay, guy.
Chris arrived.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah,
he vouched for us. That's why we made it to the next level. That was awesome. This is great.
Yeah.
Was there anything else? Yeah, Jeff, did you have?
I was just going to say, is there anything else that you guys wanted to cover, or anything? How can people find? Because I think one thing, people think radio, and I think I can only listen to it in my car or on my stereo. There's other ways to reach you guys. So how can people connect?
Yeah, so you can go online, WYCE.org. That'll take you to our website. We have a Listen Live button. You can also download our app from the App Store. It's just WYCE, and that's how everyone all over the world listens to us, is through that app. We're able to get streaming reports to see just how far-reaching our little mighty radio station is. But yeah, those would be outside of terrestrial radio, listening in your car or at home. Yeah, you can stream online or on the app.
88.1 FM if you're in West Michigan. We're a 10,000-watt over-the-air FM radio station, which is kind of a cool thing because there are still people who listen to FM radio in 2023, 2024. And Chris referenced transistor radio, the band that was the sound produced on a transistor radio. For listeners here of podcasts who are under the age of 40, the transistor radio was a small portable means of listening to AM and FM radio, mainly popular actually invented in the early 50s, popular through about the late 80s, maybe. And if you really want to have fun, go into a Best Buy and ask for a transistor radio. You'll see the person's head blow up. Yeah. Or just ask for a radio for that matter.
Yeah, my brother used to have one, and he'd always listen to the Tigers at night. He'd sneak it into his room and to the late games. And I think he listened to a little music too, though.
I do have to give my biggest memory on radio when I was just old enough to understand. Like, I knew what music was, right? My parents had, whether it was cassettes or 8-tracks or records or whatever, listening to Beatles, Beach Boys, that kind of stuff. But my dad would always put on different radio. Like, he didn't change what we were listening to. I'm like, what is that? So finally, maybe I was in first or second grade, he got me an alarm clock that had a radio built in. And I was like, this is what you were doing to listen to? Like, I can just do this myself and listen to it? So that must have been closer to 92 when the movie Home Alone came out, and I got one of those Talkboy recording devices, and I would record my alarm clock radio every night before I went to bed because they would always play the best songs I liked, right?
Yeah.
Little did I know they were playing those songs all day long. I just thought they were playing them in that half an hour window that I was listening to, right? So recording all those and listening to them back, that was my foray into what radio meant, and it was so cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, radio's great, and thanks for keeping it alive, guys. This is it's really important, especially this station with how much you guys are doing for the community.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, we appreciate what you guys are doing because it all plays into supporting local music. And I want to know, did they have shag carpet in their basement, Ryan and Jeff? Was it shag carpet or
no?
Much to my chagrin.
It was normal, boring. I got pictures I'll show you, but it's just boring tech desk with microphones and music posters all over, basically.
It wasn't boring.
It wasn't boring?
You can't have music posters and be boring.
You're right. It could have been a lot more boring. I guess that's what the takeaway is for sure. Thank you guys so much for having us out. This was great.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys.
See ya.
If you enjoyed this episode, check out more episodes on any streaming service out there today, as well as our website.
www.themittenmusic.com.
You can also find playlists and concert listings there too.
Check us out on social medias, Facebook and Instagram.